Welcome, everybody. It's another episode of No Driving Gloves. Amazingly, you've got Will, Derek, and John together again. I guess the holiday season's kind of slowed down our schedules a bit. And, well, of course, nobody's ready. Somebody's got their phone dinging.
Will? Damn it, Will. All right, my bad.
And this week, we're going to do it a little bit different. I don't think anybody's really done anything. Did anybody do anything exciting? Or has it just been shop cleanup for Will? And
I've just traveled from coast to coast.
You see my foot recovery?
Oh yeah, you went down to the Cigar City Concours or something, didn't you? Or was that?
Yeah. We went down to the Cigar City Concours, and then I had to fly to Michigan for a museum organization trip, and I've just been all from South Coast to North Coast in a matter of 3 days. So
yeah, my biggest thing I had to do was get all the leaves out of the pool from when I was gone to SEMA. Nobody volunteered to clean the pool while I was gone. So yeah, and when it gets dark at 5 o'clock, there's not a whole lot you can do with digging out pool leaves in the dark. So that's what my weekend consisted of.
You and your dang pool. But so this week we're going to jump right in and see where this goes. It's going to be an interesting episode. We're joined by Tony Whatley, who's a gentleman I heard on another podcast. Mark Green, formerly of Griot's Garage, and that does a little podcast called Cars Yeah. I don't mind mentioning other podcasts than that. And I heard Tony on there. Oh, you were on March or April of this year or something like that. Just kind of a fascinating life. He's about my age, and he's maneuvered a little bit. Business coach, entrepreneur. I think he's oil and gas business, but a car guy at heart. And somehow we got chatting this week, and he said, I'd like to just come on and talk cars. So we'll get a little bit of background on Tony here, let him fill us in and figure out kind of what he does for a day job, and then he can fill us in on, we'll figure out where it goes. I know he had some wonderful vacation pictures. He does hot rod power tours all the time in his Camaro or his Viper, and he's, I think, GM guy at heart. But Tony, you want to say hi and fill the listeners in a little bit better than I can?
Yeah, John, thank you for inviting me to the show, and I can't wait to meet your listeners. I've had summary. I'm a very much a car fanatic, and it's kind of cool to be sitting in a circle to have these kind of conversations with other people who obviously have a lot of passion for the automotive sphere. But my passion goes all the way back to childhood. I still remember sitting at the dining table watching my mom make dinner every night, and while I should have been coloring in my coloring book, I was actually drawing cars in the open places of the book. So they started to notice that. It's like, why are we buying you all these coloring books? Like, all you do is draw cars in all the blank places. And my dad was working in the chemical plants at the time, and he actually started bringing home nut and bolt washers. So I had this little Ziploc bag full of different shapes and sizes of nuts and nut washers. And I would use those to trace the wheels and tires so I could draw my cars better. And so that started as an early thing. I was always fascinated with drawing cars. That led to Hot Wheels and building model cars. And eventually that became full-size cars, and which led to me going to school to get an engineering degree because I wanted to design cars. And it's funny because, Derek, here in the Corvette Museum, that was like a dream job for me as a child, actually in high school, to design the Camaro, be on the Camaro team and be the designer of the newest Camaros and the newest Corvettes was kind of like my career path that I wanted to do. But then I graduated and I realized that the oil industry pays a lot more than the car industry. So I decided to stay here in Houston.
That's one thing I think the three of us sacrificed. I wanted to be an attorney, but I figured even if I was really good, I might be able to buy 3 or 4 cool cars. But if I restored them, I could drive them all. And so far it's proved true. I've driven them all, but I don't make any money.
So yeah, that led on to me starting a few businesses in the automotive industry because I still had a lot of passion for it. And while I had a decent income, I decided to start a website, and it became ls1tech.com, which grew into the largest internet, basically the largest community forum for the General Motors sphere. So we really focused on the Camaro, the Firebird, and the Corvette. And just to give your listeners an idea, we had at the time over 100,000 unique visitors per day. And even today, that website still exists. There's over 300,000 registered members. So that's something that we started just as a whim to pay for our free car. I had one partner in Chicago, John, and he said, man, if we could create this website and make $500 a month extra, it would basically like you'd have a free Camaro and I'd have a free Firebird, and that'd be pretty cool, right? And I was like, yeah, that's a good idea. So that's what we started, and it just basically grew because we treated it like a business. We just didn't ever treat it like a hobby, and that's how it grew.
Maybe that's our mistake because we're not making car payments with the podcast, and we treat it like a hobby.
Yet there's always the possibility.
You started LS1 Tech, what was that, if I'm remembering your previous interview right, 2001 or so? So still kind of, I want to say, infancy of the internet and that, or was it a little bit before that? 90? I can't remember what year you said you started it.
I'd say the forums really started taking off around 95, 96, but we did start it in 2001, actually this month. So this would be, I guess, 18 years. So happy birthday, LS1 Tech. 17 years really. So
now I remember being a CRX guy. That's kind of where Will met me. I was driving a CRX with a ZC swap, and I remember doing all the forums, the CRX discussion forum, and that's where you would have found me in the mid 90s. I guess I got out of it for a little bit of period of time, and then when I came back, forums changed so much. I don't know if I've really hung out with forums.
Yeah, we learned how to monetize them because we were realizing at some point that we were having a lot more distribution, a lot more eyeballs going to forums than there was even magazines. So we started really hurting the magazines, not intentionally because we loved being on the magazines. I mean, I used to write and do a lot of articles for the performance car magazines, but everybody was going to the internet for their information then. And the latest and greatest information was live right on the internet rather than waiting for a monthly subscription to come in.
I remember that changeover. Was it, I want to say 96. I was at Illinois Central College doing a modern automotive technology degree. And one of our assignments is we had to get on the internet and we had to research because one of our professors swore up and down that the internet was going to be something. And that's where we would find our information. And that was, like I said, the mid 90s. And I guess he was right. It's a pretty intelligent guy.
Yeah, that was kind of funny. The first forum I actually joined was probably 95, and it was a billiards, shooting pool group because I was playing semi-pro 9-ball and I was sponsored playing. I was in college at that time, and I was like, I want to join a forum that just has like a hobby thing. So I found one for pool to like look for people to play across the country and things like that, or whoever was coming into Houston to challenge them, gamble a little bit. And so I was real creative, and I used the username 9ball, which became my online persona for the next 15 years. Because rather than trying to create a new username for every forum I joined, I just used the same one.
I've always used spare car for that. For me, I stole it from my dad. He put that on the tag for his Viper when he got that years ago. But the older I get, the smaller the world is. The neighbor we had when I was in grade school in a little town called Monmouth, Illinois, actually plays professional 9-ball around the world. He's written the book, Blue Book of Pool Cues. He's like a pool cue expert.
Okay. Yeah.
And he's a huge car guy. He recently bought an Audi R8, and somehow he put a picture up on Facebook the other day, and he said, well, I got the old Mazda out of the showroom and cleaned it up, and he's got a Mazda Cosmos, stuck in the corner. And I just remember always watching his family next door and Panteras and RX-7s and Audi, 1980, 81 Audi Quattros when they really meant something. And just kind of that, to me, the little funny world. You can cross 9-ball and whoever knew it.
Exactly. Hey, I actually quit playing after college. When I started making money, I decided I didn't like gambling.
Brad does pretty well with the 9-ball stuff, and with he's an author, and his family owns Simpson Limited, which is a gun shop in Galesburg, Illinois. They're like the foremost knowledgeable people on Lugers. They've owned the first Luger ever created and written some books on that too. So he's not suffering either, but I don't know if it's oil and gas money. I've watched Dallas before, so. Guys, you're just kind of sitting there quiet. You have questions or?
You won't shut up, John.
Hey, I'm good at that. You got to push me out of the way.
Oh,
I'm just sitting back enjoying, listening to the conversation and learning a little bit about our guest tonight. But I did hear him say something in that interview about when you mentioned that we're not making any money off the podcast yet. He said, you never know. Maybe he can help us turn this thing around, and we can all start having some, spare car payment money and get some more cars in our stables.
That's it. You just got to build the audience, however you need to, whether that's marketing or firing up your social media and just really promoting the show and getting more listeners. And I've got a mentor, his name's Lewis Howes, and he's got one of the top rated podcasts overall. And the guy's making multiple 7 figures a year just on his podcast. So that's kind of the reason you can use those as kind of your target and go, holy crap, there's people out there becoming millionaires because of their podcasts. Absolutely. There's several. I would say that most of the top 10 podcasts on iTunes are definitely making millions. Like Joe Rogan, he's clearing a couple million at least just from his podcast commercials.
We all can't get Elon Musk on smoking a joint though. So
there you go. Yeah. But you know what? There you go. That's what you got to do is attract the right people. And you get people on there that have a pretty good following and they're going to promote the show for you. And it's all about collaboration. I have my own podcast show as well. And I look for influencers at my level or a little bit above. And I try to get them as guests because I know that they're going to get a little bit of my crowd. I'm going to get a little bit of theirs. And there's no scarcity mindset because we're both going to level up a little bit for each episode we make. So that's really the key. Everybody that's got the top level ranked shows, they've collaborated their way up to that top level.
It's all about networking. It's like I said, there's things you learn in life, and it's networking and asking and talking to people. And if you want to mention the name of your podcast, that we have no rules or anything on advertising or whatever. So if you want to mention that and see if any of our listeners go your way, we do respectable numbers. If you go by Libsyn, we're not quite in the top 50% of podcasts, but we're really close. And I'm proud for none of us are social media savvy. I spend a lot of time working on it, but Facebook changes everything.
There you go. Hey, top 50% is good because there's millions of podcasts out there. So that's really good to actually get past all those. And I started it about 2 months ago, and I've got about 27 episodes recorded. And 17 at this time released, but it's basically a entrepreneurship mindset, health and wealth, relationships, anything that's going to be catering to business owners. I really go after the small business owners because that's the level of coaching that I do. As I help small business owners level up their enterprise to get to the next level, wherever that's identifying the inefficiencies in their processes and finding things where they can improve, getting them back, better marketing and branding, especially online, and just helping them scale. That's what I have a lot of passion for. So the last year and a half, I've kind of stepped away from the oil and gas career. And really, I have an automotive retail business that I've had for about 12 years now. And then I just do the one-on-one coaching, and I'm building this brand. I started doing more public speaking, and I wrote the book. So it's interesting. I'm not afraid to evolve. Whenever I have a passion for something, I'm never afraid to just go all in and just chase that.
I think I've said to you on Facebook before in one of our conversations, I really can't wait for the audiobook. I'm about 3-4 chapters into the digital book, but I just never have time to read. I spend all my time in a car or with at least headphones on listening to stuff, and I'm able to consume books really fast and podcasts really fast that way. But reading in my eyes and my age, I don't get around to that anymore. So I'm looking forward to the audiobook, which I'm going to say it's called Side Hustle Millionaire. And it's kind of about doing that little side hustle thing and what you've got to do to, I think you make a good point. Hopefully I'm not confusing you with somebody, but at one point, you had your day job and you made decent money, but your side job, you were only doing 2 or 3 hours a week and made decent money. So why give up the day job? And it's kind of that mindset. You just do whatever you need to do and I guess set goals and try to achieve them.
Exactly. That's what I say is try to make as much money as you can in the most efficient manner as possible. I don't believe in just busting your ass and trying to kill yourself to make a buck. And this digital world, there's a lot of different ways to make money compared to what we grew up in when you just thought you were trading dollars per hours. That's kind of the old mindset. And nowadays with the digital type businesses and businesses that you can multiply your time, you can be omnipresent and make money even when you're sleeping or sitting on the commode reading my book. Or you could be making money at all hours of the night. And just that's the incredible things of the technology nowadays is having products that are digital or whatnot that can be copy pasted essentially at no manufacturing cost, shipped across wires on the internet at basically no shipping cost. These are the kind of things that we have, like any kind of recurring business model. Like LS1 Tech, we earned all the revenue from advertising, obviously. So to give you an example, we were making about $40,000 profit per month on that website when we were running it for a few years. And that's how we were able to sell it for multiple seven figures on the exit plan, and hence the name Side Hustle Millionaire. That's basically my story.
You also presently run a online automotive business, don't you? We'll start getting this more to the car stuff and getting the other guys involved there. I'm all fascinated about this side hustle stuff, and that's hence one reason for the podcast.
Well, see, I am too. I would like to talk with Tony about that for the whole thing, but the whole reason Tony came on our podcast was to talk cars. Maybe there'll be a later date where we can really pick Tony's brain about small businesses and making them more profitable. And essentially what he just said was my business. I sell man hours, and building hot rods, and in this day of time, that's somebody's got to do it. It might as well be me, right? But
that's right.
It's but you're totally right. Selling hours is tough nowadays, and it's the hot rod industry's as far as the side that I'm on, owning a hot rod shop, it's a very, very tough business to make good money at. It's very fun. It's very rewarding. And, it's essentially hanging out. If you like the guys you work with, it's essentially hanging out with your friends and building cool stuff all day. But it's not a very high level profit margin in it.
Definitely. I'd say half the clients I work with are shop owners, either performance shop or restoration shop. And I get it, man. I've built cars from the ground up myself, so I kind of have a really good knowledge of what's all involved in the scheduling and the parts and how everything works and what the bottlenecks are and paint shop jail and all these kind of things. And it's cars like you're building, Will, like at the highest levels. Yeah, those can be like really stinkers on the profit margin, because a lot of times builders want to add a little bit more custom features. They spend a lot more time on those small details that get noticed in a big show, but they don't get paid for that. They're not getting compensated for that extra work that they're putting in to make this masterpiece. Where the highest profit margin shops out there tend to be the ones that just focus on really simple crap, like come in, bolt on an exhaust, put on an airbox lid, change out the wheels, maybe put some nice rotors on the car and send it out the door, because they're get paid based on just completing a job, like this over and over and over process, rather than tying up a bunch of man hours into a project.
That's right. We do a lot better doing vintage air installs. We sell a good bit of wheels too, like your website that you have. Mm-hmm. We're dealers for a lot of the same companies. Matter of fact, that's where we make a lot more money at. It's the 40-hour jobs, not the 3,000-hour jobs that you do really well on. And but with my mindset, the way I'm wired, it's more of creating a piece of art versus, yes, it's a car, and that's ultimately my passion since I was, since I could walk. It is a car, but it's more about the design and making something unique and different that is going to make people walk around it and go, holy cow, I wish I would have thought of that. Or, one of my favorite things to say that I get told all the time is, I don't like that body style of car, but man, I like that one. To me, that's, it don't pay the bills, but it's worth a lot just to hear that come out of, people's mouth.
Absolutely. I totally.
You guys are talking a language I don't understand, because I come from the nonprofit world here. I just don't make any money. and I fight with budgets day in and day out. No, but it's actually, I'm very interested because I've always kind of thought about doing, and I have a lot of friends that have gone from the nonprofit world to opening their own shop or something like that. I've got a good friend back in Michigan that, he left the nonprofit he was in, and now he's doing, a mechanical restoration, just general maintenance on early brass era, horseless carriage, classic era automobiles. Kind of something I've always thought of. Of course, my kind of area of expertise or passion and all that is kind of that same era, but I also done a lot with other early engines and other early machinery, a lot of early clocks. These two guys, John and Will, know I'm a clock collector. I work on early clocks, stuff like that. Always had this idea that maybe I could turn that into something, but I'm one of those people that my mindset is in the nonprofit world, and every time I think about, I'm gonna open this great business, I'm gonna help people with their cars or their cool old machinery. You do that. I don't even. Where do you start? I don't. What do you mean I can't have a zero budget and break even every year?
So is the nonprofit, is it because you like the charity aspect, or is it because you just don't like making money?
I
mean, is it the philanthropy thing, or is it you're just like, hey, we're just gonna break even? I mean, what's the deciding factor there?
I have always had a passion for. Well, actually, the funny thing is, when I was in high school, my whole career path was totally different. I was actually chemistry guy, sciences. I've actually got about 5 years of chemistry behind me between high school and college. And the plan was to go into the FBI, believe it or not. I was already talking to the FBI and setting up to go to Quantico, and basically backed out. I've always had a passion for history. I guess teaching people about, I find the development of technology and how it's impacted our lives very interesting. And I enjoy curating that and educating people in that. And of course, the way you do that is, either be a teacher at a university or a school, which are basically nonprofits, or go work at a museum and it's a nonprofit and you don't make a lot of money. So I guess I'm just messed up in the head is what that's telling everyone. I mean, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know what my mindset, why I can't break that barrier and get into that, other world. I don't know if I'm just so ingrained in being that passionate about that part of my life, and kind of doing that I'm just like, yeah, okay, I'll just stick with this and be broke forever.
So I actually have a response, because as you know, there's a lot of, I guess, especially with the politics and media out there, we don't have to go into that subject, but they're trying to do all these type of financial spectrum division of people. They got the poverty class, middle class, upper class. You always hear about these things on the news, and you'll find that sometimes the poverty class will kind of look at the affluent people and go, oh, you guys must be bad people, and you got all this money and you should donate it and this and that. We've all heard that kind of stuff, right? Here's the thing: when people tell you like, hey, I don't believe in making money because, this and that. Well, the right answer to that I give to them is like, hey, it's your duty to earn as much as your potential, because what you decide to do with that is up to you. If you want to be a bigger philanthropist, create your own museum, donate it to kids, go buy a luxury yacht, whatever you want to do, I don't care, because that's your money. But it's really your duty to earn to your potential to be able to do whatever you want and to have that option. So when you start to put it in that perspective, you're like, holy crap, man, maybe I should be earning more, because then I could donate more. So you can always do more when you live in abundance than when you don't have it. See what I mean?
Oh yeah.
So that's how I tend to answer those questions about the nonprofit. Like, don't be ashamed or afraid to earn the money, because it's your potential to do that. But what you do with it is going to decide if you're living to your values or not.
Yeah, 100% agree. Yeah, and I just, like Will said, this is all not talking about cars, but it's just an interesting topic, and I'm actually very interested in kind of listening to your podcast now and kind of hearing that whole side of thing. It's interesting.
Honestly, while you were talking about your passions of teaching people and the intricacies and the old world technology versus new, what was resonating in my mind at that moment was saying that you need to have a YouTube channel to really cover these kind of details and educate people on that stuff on video.
More Mondays.
I was just going to say he needs to look up More Mondays.
I'm not sure what that is.
Of course, it's done through the National Corvette Museum. Sometimes it's every other Monday. Sometimes we go a little longer. Sometimes it's every Monday. I do a quick Facebook video. It goes up on YouTube as well, called More Mondays. And it's about the history of Corvette and some of the things we have hidden in the museum, stories about Corvette history. And once in a while, if I'm traveling to another museum, I'll do a segment on something at another museum. We put it out there for our, the people that follow the Corvette Museum on Facebook and YouTube, and just give them little tidbits of information, mainly to try to get them interested in coming to the museum to learn more. So,
well, that's cool for the museum, but that's not cool for you. You got to build your personal brand. Maybe like you could do one that talks about clocks and all the other, trinkets and cool, like history things that you have a lot of passion for other than just Corvettes. I mean, you already have that experience making those videos. Maybe you make your own, brand video that has kind of the same format, but just covering the things that you want to share, whatever that might be.
I already like this guy. I'm really liking this guy. Can we, can we just add him to being one of our podcast hosts? I mean, weekly basis.
Yeah, I'm always thinking about how to monetize things. That's just how my brain works.
I was at a concert with my girlfriend on Friday night, and I had no clue who Dawes was or anything. Knew a couple songs because she played them. And what I'm doing is I'm sitting there, and I finally go, "So what'd these tickets cost?" And she told me, and I said, "Well, there's 1,000 people in this room, and you figure, okay, I wonder what their take is, and then the T-shirt take, and then the bar sales, and trying to figure out the actual income for that one show." And why I don't think I do it at the same level you do, Tony, I'm always playing that numbers game and always looking at what I can do, but
absolutely scalability. Like I always think in multiples. If you can get away from the dollar per hour model of yourself, like a lot of people set their self-worth based on what they get paid per hour, and they think, I'm a mechanic, I make $25 an hour, like that's all I'm worth, and engineer, like I make $50 an hour, that's what I'm worth. But it's just not true, because we have a finite amount of hours per day to work, generally 8 to 12 hours for most people. And that's going to set an upper limit based on what you can earn. So if you start thinking about what value you can create to this world that can scale, that's where you're going to make the real money. That's when you own the companies and you have employees working and creating some kind of value to add to this world. You're getting paid off of those people. And everything just scales. But now with digital products and digital businesses, you don't need a storefront. I mean, Will, you mentioned the online wheel retail company. I've had that 12 years, and I still make sales even when I'm traveling in Europe. So a month ago, I was in Spain sitting on a cruise ship, and here I'm getting $1,000 a day, like profit from selling things online. So I like to create businesses where I don't have to be somewhere on time. I can show up when I want to. I can do one-on-one coaching sitting in a cafe somewhere in Europe to a person in Hawaii. I like to have this flexibility in my time. As I get older, I just want to have more flexibility and more time control rather than chasing the dollar and trading dollars for hours.
As I've gotten older, I've found that it's not necessarily what I make; it's the time and the quality of time. So I think we all eventually reach that point. We just reach it too late, and so many of us get into a 9-to-5 grind and become debt slaves of term. You have, I got a car payment and a mortgage, and so I can't take that risk. And some things changed for me this year where I'm kind of able to take those risks a little bit. So I'm venturing off, and that's one reason I had you jumped at the chance when I think you jokingly said something about, car podcast, I'd love to be on it, is I figured some of your motivational stuff could inspire some of our listeners. I didn't necessarily think you would inspire our hosts, but it worked. But I'm looking at my clock here, and we've chatted with you about 30 minutes about your job. Now let's talk about, you wanted to come on and, like Will said, talk about cars. You started with a Camaro, and you did a Viper, and if I remember right, one of your early cars was like an anniversary Trans Am or something, and you direct the conversation. Where do you want to go on cars? Like I said, we're pretty good seat of the pants. We can cover anything and talk about anything, or at least BS our way around it. So.
Okay. I'd say that I'd start back when I was 14 and I was out there mowing yards in the neighborhood. And I grew up lower middle class, small home that home was probably 1,000 square foot, to give you an idea. My parents, were blue collar. My mom worked as a cafeteria lady in the public school system her entire career. My dad was working out in the chemical plants, started out as a pipe fitter, superintendent eventually. And they just taught me that if I wanted something, I had to go figure it out. We didn't have handouts. We didn't have allowance back then. It's just like, get out there and go do something. So for me, it was pushing the lawnmower around, knocking on doors of any house that had tall grass and asking if I could mow the yard for $10. And if they told me no, I said, can I wash your car for $5? And that's just how I made my money on the summer times and in the evenings. And I ended up buying my first car for $1,200, which is just a rusted piece of crap, 1969 Camaro, which honestly, this was like 1980, had to be around 87 when I bought it. So it really wasn't that special of a car back then because it was just an old Camaro. Like in 87, it was just a used Camaro, and it was so rusty you could reach through the quarter panel and like into the trunk. So it was pretty bad. The car didn't run or drive. And my dad, he's very mechanically inclined. We spent an entire year picking that thing apart and just fixing it. I became a very good Bondo artiste. I could really mold some Bondos, like those creases on the 69 Camaro fenders, man. I got those down, and then you use the chrome trim to like hold it up in place. Man, I made some really good Bondo mud pie like cars back then, and that's all I could afford, And then my first job at 15 was working at McDonald's, and every dollar I made was either spent on my girlfriend or that car. I have an affinity for 1969 Camaros. It's my favorite car, just for those emotional attachments. But I've owned several first-gen Camaros. I did one of the very first LS swap first gens, which are like a dime a dozen nowadays. You can't swing a cat at a car show out hitting an LS swap first gen. But I was like one of the first, I think, 5 people to do one back in, must have been 2003, when people were just starting to figure out you could pull those engines out and put them in old cars. That's kind of the thing. Like, no matter what cars I have or what I can afford, I always got a first gen Camaro, and I still have a 69 Camaro convertible out there in the shop right now. So it's just, that's my passion, is those. I've owned several muscle cars along the way. I've had probably over 50 different cars that I've built for the magazines and such. I had a lot of sponsors working with LS1 Tech and GM High Tech Performance. Did a lot of articles for Super Chevy and Chevy High Performance, different magazines. I was doing a lot of photojournalism back then. That was a side hustle on its own. Get paid $1,000 an article, and you got another one that comes out every month. That's a pretty good little side money for something that you enjoy doing. I like taking photos and looking at cool cars and meeting people that own these cool cars. And it's just, I'm just a car fanatic. When I wake up in the morning, I think about cars, and anytime I'm doing anything, I'm thinking about cars. If I'm working, I'm thinking about cars. I'm thinking about what I'm going to buy next, what I'm going to drive next. What can I sell to buy the next one? You're always having these games going on in your head. So it's really interesting when you meet other car guys. It's like we get along instantly because we're all thinking like that.
So what's your daily driver right now?
Well, since I work at home, I would say I actually split the duty. I've got a white Viper TA that I drive around, and I've also got the 69 Camaro convertible. I just kind of drive them around. I put that Viper's got 19,000 miles on it now since it was new, and the Camaro I built 2 years ago, and it's got, I think, 12,000 miles on it now. So I just drive them, man.
That's the Camaro's the orange convertible?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. Everybody looks at that car and like, you actually drive this around? Because it's not a car like you would build. I mean, it's about $200,000 budget to give to listeners an idea what that car build is.
Did you do the power tour last year? Or no, it was this year. Did you do the power tour this year?
Yeah, I only made it halfway, and the computer went bad in South Carolina, so we only made it halfway. I had to get it towed back.
Okay. Did you take the rural route, or did you take the interstate from Chattanooga to Birmingham?
Since I've done power tours so often, I usually just take the interstates. So I think this was like 14 years that I've been on power tour, and we usually just try to get to the next venue so we can kind of relax a bit,
The rural route come right in front of our shop this year. and we had our big trailer set up, and there was a ton of people stopped. It was pretty cool.
Cool.
Pretty neat deal.
So you live out in some pretty country, because I know that area. It's beautiful out there.
Yeah, other than right now, and it's wet and rainy and cold. Oh, yeah, the rolling hills of North Alabama it's a pretty place.
Yep. So yeah, that would have been my third long haul in the car, and the computer went bad. It basically all the sensors on the top half of the engine lost their ground signal, and those all passed to the computers. So basically, couldn't do anything.
Yeah, there ain't much you can do about that.
No.
So I got to ask Tony: are those the only two cars in the stable right now, or do you have some other cars that you just kind of collect and have sitting around?
We've got a new Camaro out there, and I just had a 70 Chevelle SS 454 that I've had for 10 years, and I sold that to a buddy of mine a couple of weeks ago because he'd been pounding me about it, and I've been thinking about getting something else possibly. And I've got another Viper out there, an 06 blue with white stripes. That's got about 1,300 at the wheels.
Nice.
No, there was something I was going to say about that, because you're definitely an advocate for drive them and not letting them sit. But I can't remember. There was something that went back to Mark's podcast that
it may have been the story of my granddad, what he told me on his deathbed. But I'll share that story with your listeners because it's a good story, and I think all car people need to hear it. But my granddad, he loved cars himself. He grew up in when he was 18, it was like the World War II era. So you can kind of get the idea of who his age was. And, he had like the 55 Chevys and the 57 Chevys and all these cool cars, but he never modified them because he was one of those people that was like, oh, I got to keep it in good condition and save it for the next guy. And we all have friends like that. And we hear that stuff. And I'm like, man. So when he was getting older and, he had asbestosis, and, we all knew he was going to pass at some point. He just really couldn't breathe very well. And, he told me, he's like, Tony, whenever you decide to start doing stuff with cars, don't be afraid to modify them. Don't be afraid to enjoy them, but go enjoy them. Because he goes, well, I'm laying here, I'm thinking about all the cars I've owned in my life that I did not enjoy because I was trying to keep them too pretty and save them for the next person. And he goes, I wish I could go down the drag strip in that 55 Chevy right now that I never did. So he had all these regrets wrapped into the cars. So he had pride in ownership, but not pride in usership. So there's so many people out there that have that same philosophy. I mean, you see all these exotics and stuff that get traded in with 200 miles on them. I was like, dude, that would be the first couple hours of me owning one of those cars. So use them and race them. I take that Viper TA. I've had it on the track. I've had it at the drag strip. Drove it on Power Tour twice. I drove it home, from Michigan, and just drive the cars, enjoy those, because that's one thing you don't want to ever have to be on your deathbed go, man, I just did not enjoy that car, and I wish I would have. That would suck.
I see so much car stuff, and I get confused. Did you not have pictures of your car earlier this year driving it in the snow, your white Viper? Was that you?
Yes. Yeah, we actually were driving the Viper. I live in Houston, Texas, and we were driving it to Las Vegas for a Viper convention like they do every other year. And as we were going through New Mexico, as the elevation starts to get really high, we got up there as Flagstaff, and it was like a whiteout. It was coming down, holy crap. And here I am on Toyo R888R, road course tires. And yeah, it's snowing, and we just basically had to drive through it. And honestly, the car did pretty well in snow. The new Vipers have traction control systems, and I just put it in rain mode, and actually had less hydroplaning in snow than it did on rain.
Wow.
Yeah,
that's a pretty good testament to the Viper right there.
Yeah, it worked really well. I mean, the good thing about snow is it kind of blows off the road, but the rain just stays on it was dry. It was so cold. It was dry snow.
Snow's usually not bad. It's always the ice that accompanies it. But,
exactly.
Nobody ever thinks about that. And there's a kind of the famous picture I see quite often of the Ferrari F40 under 3 or 4 inches of snow. And one thing I always remember, I went to every Formula One race at Indianapolis when they were there this last time around. And every year, and I don't know whose car it was, there was always a Ferrari F40 parked in front of the museum. And you look in it, and it's got McDonald's wrappers and soda cans thrown on the passenger floor. And you go, that's what you got to do with it. Who cares? It's a Ferrari. You're enjoying it. You drive it. It doesn't do you any good. It's saving it for the next guy. Why? I even had that thought process go through my head today. I was talking to somebody about my SHO, and I said, it's a 17. It's not the exciting first-gen ones or anything. And he goes, oh, there's some serious power there. And it got me thinking, for a few $100, not much money, I could bump that from 400 to 600 horsepower and have a fun daily driver type car. But I don't know. I'm a slave to the warranty, I guess. But it's... you kind of got me thinking again. Girlfriend might kill me if I stay up late looking at some ECU kits for that car.
That's it, man.
Now I've got to say that this doesn't just apply to more modern vehicles either, because I've been around antique cars for a long time and involved in some different antique car groups, and I've been on a number of tours, Model T tours, just antique, brass and gas tours, things like that. And the groups I tend to run around with, we take the antique cars, the Model Ts, all these cars down dirt roads. We've been on fire trails in the national forests of northern Michigan. I've got pictures of me. My beard is just white, full of dust from the roads we were driving down. We've gotten questions before. We'd stop at like one of the national park visitor centers or something after we'd been running around, and the park rangers are always just like, why would you drive those cars on those kind of roads? What's wrong with you? It's like, well, what kind of roads do you think they were built for? We're trying to actually experience what these cars were made for, and that's what it's about, actually getting cars out, whether they're antique or classics or brand new cars, and experiencing the automobile. I mean, to me, that's what cars are for. Drive them, experiencing them, all of that. So, I mean, I think it's a great philosophy.
Absolutely, man. I'm smiling really big right now because I can imagine just jumping in a Model T and just going down some pothole, like terrible dirt road, because that's what they had back then, man. There were horse trails that they drove on.
It's absolutely fantastic. If you ever get the chance to, go do one of those tours with somebody, I absolutely say do it. It is an absolute blast.
Awesome. Yeah, that's great.
And like on our, if you go read our motto on our website, we build extremely expensive cars, but they're not one to one scale models. Everything we build here, you can get out and drive and enjoy, and no, you're not going to take like that Dart we built and use it as a daily driver. But it's been on the drag strip, it's been on the autocross, it's cut donuts in parking lots. And people think you're crazy for taking a car like that and building it for the Detroit Auto Rama and getting a grade 8. But after that, it's a car.
Yep.
That's what you're supposed to do with it. You won the big award. Now go out and enjoy it. Yes, you got a lot of money in it, but you got what you set after already in your hands. Go enjoy it. It's not going to bring nowhere near what you got in it anyway. So have fun with it. Drive it. Enjoy it.
Yeah, it kind of goes back to the sunk cost fallacy. Now, you've already spent the money. You're not going to get the money back, so you might as well go have fun with it.
That's right. That is exactly right. And believe it or not, a lot of the guys that we build cars for, that's what they do. And then some of them just, they want them to sit in their garage and their buddies come over and stand around it and smoke cigars and drink beer and just look at them. So 4 flat tires, they don't care. It looks pretty sitting there. That's all they want to do.
There's a good conversation when people come over and they see a car that's built like that and it's got like little rock chips on it and like maybe a little scratch here and there. And they're like, oh, look, it's got a flaw. You're like, I know, because I drove it across the country a few times. That sounds a whole lot more fun than saying, well, I don't ever drive it. How did it get this dust on it? And so
that's right.
The fact that you can jump into an expensive, like custom built car and just go haul it across the country, like, Man, that's way better bragging rights than sitting there under a car cover.
That's right. We were in Bowling Green, and we had the Dart there, and there was a guy had a Bentley Continental GT, and we were hot lapping him on the drag strip. You know, so it was the Dart and a Bentley Continental GT out there just giving it hell. I mean, as hard as we could go, and that was pretty fun. You know, taking that car and doing that with it, and because it's fast. It's not, you know, it's got a 392 cubic inch late model supercharged Hemi with a 6-speed. I mean, it'll flat get on down the road if you want it to.
I've got a friend in the local quote exotic car club. We get together most Saturdays for lunch, and he sends out his email and gives the Lambo weather report. And if it's going to rain or something, he always says, drive the rain car. And that usually means everybody drives their Corvettes. And he's taken to, well, everybody drives their Corvette. So he stopped driving his Corvettes. And now he uses his Ferrari 488 as his rain car. So it's nice to see somebody actually will use the car a little bit. He doesn't take some of his nicer stuff out in the rain, but just to see that, you know, something like that, again, being used and being enjoyed.
Yeah,
I've got to jump in because I love this philosophy, because as a curator at a museum, no matter what museum I've been at, and what position I've been in, I'm of the opinion, and I'll get calls or emails from people about, oh, I've got a Corvette and I'm wondering if you want it. Best example is earlier this year, I had a gentleman, reach out to us, and I think we talked about it on the show, and you might have even read about it on a couple different articles, but he called up and said, hey, I don't know if you know about this car, but I've got a 2000 Corvette, and I've driven it 773,000 miles. Still got the original engine in it. It's on its second transmission. And it's like, I was hoping to make it to 1 million miles on it, and I just don't think it's going to happen. I didn't know if you guys might want the car for the collection. It's not really pretty. He's like, the seat's torn, the clear coat's starting to bubble in some spots and peel a little bit. And I said, we'll take it. Because people call me up and they're like, the car's not perfect. I said, well, great. That's exactly what I want for the museum, because the car is a machine. It is built just like a washing machine, a dryer, a dishwasher, whatever you want to compare it to. It's meant to be used. It's meant to be a machine that we use to go from point A to point B. And guess what? When you're doing that, it's getting nicked, it's getting scratched, it's getting dented, it's getting whatever. And that's the story of that machine. To be able, the visitors to be able to see that, it just like Tony just said, they come over and they see the, in the garage, the Ferrari or the Bentley or whatever with paint chips and scratches. And the guy's like, yeah, I drove it across the country. That's why it's like that. That's the point. That's what these things are built for. Yeah, it's great to have a pristine example with 20 miles on it in the museum so people can look and see what it looked like the moment it rolled off the assembly line. But we got to have the other example, because that's the story of the automobile. That's the whole reason it was built.
Man, I got a good analogy for that. Everybody look down at your hands and look at all the scars that you got all over your hands. Would you rather be that old man that's laying? Would you rather be that guy that just is like on his deathbed that's not got a scar on his body? Because that means that guy hasn't lived. He doesn't have any stories to tell. But if I'm covered with scars head to toe from all the crap I've done, but every one of them I can remember like what I did. A lot of times it was like doing stupid shit, but it's here's a story that you can see with each scar. And that's kind of like when you see these little nicks and damages on a car, you kind of remember things.
This scar I should have probably done 3 years for. This one.
Yeah. This one I did 3 years for.
But you covered it up with a tattoo or something though, right?
Oh yeah, you can't see it now. Yeah, it's gone.
It's unfortunately it's usually the scars on the other guy's body that I do the time.
So there you go, man. The flaws tell a story.
Doing your 3 years.
Well, I had to look up that dart you kept mentioning because I remember seeing it. But what I remember now, other than the bright green color, was the headlights. The headlight detail is what I remember really standing out for me.
Yeah, the headlights on that thing are pretty cool.
Yeah, with the integrated turn signals.
Yep, and then the LED lights in the bottom are just like an all-time running light.
Cool car.
Yeah, it was a fun car to build.
I have been fortunate enough to swing by Will's shop a few times, and I was there during the dart build, and he was showing me some of the little details, and it's amazing. If we keep always talking about just doing an episode on the dart, but I think that's probably more of a YouTube thing, just because of the hundreds of little modifications on it that you never know that are there. And you were at SEMA this year too, or Tony. I wasn't, but Will was in his 42 Chevy, which I think he alluded to earlier in the show without saying it. A lot of people think it's a god-awful ugly truck to begin with, and then what he managed to do with that 42 Chevy and won the GM Design Award. I think that's what it was called at SEMA. It's just these little things, and I don't know if it's in. My girlfriend even asked, and I don't know the answer to the question. Answer it, Will. Is it you? Is it your artist? Is it your customer? Where do those designs come from? Or is it a combination of you looking at the artist's drawing? Or
on that particular truck and the dart, 99% of the ideas and stuff as far as moving the sheet metal around and changing body lines and chopping tops and making rear fenders or whatever all comes from right here at Big Oak Garage. I had Brian Stupsky draw up the dart. He helped me a little bit with the interior design. The taillight panel is 100% his baby on that car. I gave him free rein to do what he wanted to do. Now, we had already, the deck lid on those cars, factory went down to the bumper, and I wanted to, make the lid more like a Camaro, where, that whole back panel, we had something there to do something with, and not have it split for the deck lid. And so I kind of gave him free rein on that, and that's what he came up with, which is absolutely stunning. It cost a lot of money, but when Willie, the guy that owns the car, he was actually at the shop when we put it in the car for the first time, and he goes, "Will, that was worth every penny that I spent. It's like a piece of jewelry on the back of that car." But most of the stuff comes from me most of the time, and then the guys in the shop really, they can take something and just run with it too. So I got a bunch of talented guys. It's just one of those things that car will talk to you. It'll tell you what it needs. If just like the rear fenders on the blue truck. I mean, the factory 42 fenders, it looks like they called Dodge and Chevrolet was short of fenders and said, "Hey, send us some fenders." They just didn't match the truck at all. And, and that was one of the things that was just a total eyesore on that truck. And so we just elected to make rear fenders that had the same highlight lines as the front fenders, and it wasn't a hard decision to make. It was just like, yeah, those are ugly. Let's make something that look cool.
Yeah.
So
I did see the truck at SEMA, but I don't know that truck body style well enough to know the differences that you changed on it.
That's because every other one's ugly.
Yeah. You never see them like the ugly ones even restored.
So surprisingly, there wasn't really a whole lot of major stuff changed on that truck. It was just very minor, detailed stuff to just make the body of the truck flow better and have a little more Art Deco feel. I mean, the grill in that truck just screams Art Deco. And so we just kind of took that and ran with it and just really smoothed everything up, but left enough of the originality of the truck there so everybody knows it's one of those trucks. And that's what I love doing. I like making people scratch their head and come back 3 or 4 different times and say, "Man, I didn't even notice that until this time." This is my 4th time coming back to look at it. we've kind of become known for taking a lesser desirable vehicle and making it cool, which is what I love to do.
Yeah.
I say that as we're building a 61 Impala bubble top car, and we've cut it into a bazillion pieces and changing everything about it. But when we're finished with it, it's still going to look like a 61 Impala. It's just, believe it or not, there's some things on a 61 Impala that I could point out to you, and you probably never noticed it, and you'll notice it, and then from now on, you'll look at that part of that car and go, man, why did they do that like that?
Well, my 61 Impala is a pretty good looking car to start with, so maybe you should try to make that one ugly.
Yeah. That kind of I ain't going to. I'm going to keep my mouth shut.
So not only do we make ugly cars look good, we can make good looking cars ugly.
I got in a little bit of trouble for making some comments that seem I better keep my mouth shut. Oh. Oh Lord.
I think the 61 needs some fins on the fenders, the front.
We'll put 59 Cadillac fins on the front fenders.
There you go.
And then we can take like what was it, the 2000 Cadillac that had the long skinny taillights, everybody put them in their Chevrolet trucks, We can incorporate those into being LED headlights, in the fins of the 60 fin or 59 fin. There we go.
Man, I'm thinking really obtuse now. We could put some gurney bubbles in the top of the bubble top and have a double bubble top.
Dude, even better, Carmen at AM Hot Rod Glass is like my sister. We can have her make them out of acrylic.
Oh, like T-tops? Gurney T-tops. Acrylic.
Wait. Now you're just starting to talk like you're going to try to be like George Barris and destroy something like the Lincoln Futura and turn it into the Batmobile. I mean, that was just destroyed the Lincoln Futura.
Yeah. What was that show that was on TV for a little while? Pitbull and Leepu? It'd be like...
Come on, Derek. Stylish cars.
Derek, if we call it art, they can't make fun of it. That makes it off limits.
Good point.
Oh, Lord.
Well, it sounds like Tony's going to be talking to Will about a build here in the near future.
Oh.
I think we're about at that hour point, so I'm going to go ahead and say right now I'm going to do a closing, and I don't know if we'll chat after the show. Maybe I'll have to go back and move this closing.
we were just getting warmed up.
Okay, let's keep going.
No, it's fine. It's cool.
I don't know what Tony's schedule is, and I know what mine is. I don't have anything to do, but it's. But I think it was a good episode. I think some great business tips for in the beginning. I'm going to give Tony a moment here if he wants to plug any of his Facebook groups or any of that. I don't know if he really, now that he's talked to the three of us, he might be afraid and might send us somewhere else. Look up Zig Ziglar's page. But you can plug anything you want there, Tony, just for our listeners and your website or whatever, your book, and we'll see where we go from there.
Well, I keep it simple. I keep the brand name consistent, and I just direct everybody to my webpage. It's 365driven.com, 365driven.com, and you can find links to my best-selling book. You can find my podcast. You can find my blog. You can find all the links to my social media. I'm pretty active on Facebook and Instagram, but everything's in a nice little tidy package on one website.
And our nice little tidy package, one website, should hopefully be up by January. I've been finally working on it and getting rid of the generic just Lipson one we have right now. But as I always say, you can find us on Facebook and Instagram. That's where we're most active. You know where to find Will, Derek, and me at nodrivinggloves@gmail.com. Like I said, I hope this was a good episode for everybody, a little bit different, but we promised we're going to start changing it up now that I've invested in some better gear. That's it for me this evening, guys. Talk to you later.
I'm off to start a side hustle YouTube channel. So
Good.
So
Good.
if you just quit no driving gloves?
That was my resignation.